in the heart of Middle-earth, where the ancient trees grow tall and the air hums with forgotten whispers, there lies a mystery so old that even the Ents dare not speak of it. The ancient forest of Fangorn, home to the mysterious and ancient Ents, stretches across the land, its towering trees whispering the tales of ages long past. Yet, beneath the shadow of these mighty oaks, there is a secret buried so deep, so ancient, that even the Ents themselves seem reluctant to speak of it. The forest, once a symbol of nature's eternal strength, now harbors something far darker, something long forgotten, but not fully extinguished. Whispers speak of an ancient power, one tied to the very origins of Middle-earth, hidden in the deepest groves of Fangorn. The Ents, guardians of the trees and shepherds of the forest, have always maintained a watchful eye over this dark power. But what if their vigilance is not enough to keep the secrets buried beneath the soil of the ancient woods? What is the dark secret that the Ents guard in the heart of Fangorn? Why is it so dangerous that it must never be revealed? The very trees, which have stood for millennia, seem to murmur of a time before even the elves came to Middle-earth, a time when Morgoth's shadow stretched across the land, twisting the hearts of those who dared to awaken forces beyond their control. Could that dark legacy still linger beneath the roots of the trees? What if the power once sealed away by the valor still has the potential to destroy the world? This is no simple journey into the heart of an ancient forest. This is a journey into the very heart of darkness itself. For Gandalf, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, this quest will not only challenge their courage, but their very understanding of the forces that shape Middle-earth. The stakes are high, for in uncovering the truth of the Whispering Woods, they may awaken something far worse than they ever anticipated. The path into Fangorn is long and treacherous, but the mystery of what lies hidden beneath the trees has drawn them forward, and the discovery of that ancient secret will shape the future of all of Middle-earth. As they step into the forest, the danger, the mystery, and the fear of the unknown will become real. Gandalf sat alone by the flickering fire, his mind heavy with the weight of the task ahead. The ancient texts he had gathered from Rivendell lay scattered before him, pages weathered by time, yet still holding secrets too dangerous to remain buried. As his fingers traced the lines of an ancient map, the lines began to blur, leading him deeper into the labyrinth of Fangorn. He knew what lay ahead was far more dangerous than any physical threat they had faced. Aragorn entered the tent quietly, his presence a reminder of the great legacy that burdened his shoulders. The King of Gondor, though young, was a symbol of hope, a beacon in dark times. Gandalf, Aragorn said softly, his voice carrying the weight of the question that had hung between them for days. What is it we seek? What does Fangorn truly hide? Gandalf raised his gaze, his eyes filled with a mixture of caution and certainty. There is a power in the heart of this is a power so old that it has almost become forgotten, a force that could tip the balance of the world if it were to awaken. Aragorn frowned. But the Ents, are they not guardians of the forest, protectors of nature? What would they protect in silence, if not some hidden evil? They are not just guardians of trees, Aragorn, Gandalf replied. They are the keepers of the land's oldest secrets. Their role has always been to guard not just the forest, but something more ancient, more dangerous, a remnant of Morgoth's corruption. Aragorn stood still, his face troubled, as the weight of Gandalf's words settled in. What if the forest holds more than just evil? What if it holds the key to Middle-earth's future? That, Gandalf said with a somber expression, is exactly what we must find out. With Aragorn's questioning silence echoing in his mind, Gandalf moved to consult Legolas, whose knowledge of the forests was unparalleled. The elven prince, whose people had known the woodlands since the dawn of time, could perhaps provide more insight into the strange occurrences Gandalf had sensed. I've heard whispers, Gandalf, Legolas said, his tone serious. The trees speak of something ancient, not just in the usual way, as they do of the old days of the elves, but of something darker. It is as if something in Fangorn has changed recently, an unsettling presence, one that even the Ents cannot understand. Legolas' words deepened Gandalf's suspicions. The forest is waking up to something it fears, Gandalf murmured. The power that was buried long ago is stirring once again. This is more than just a simple curse of the woods. It is something that has always been part of Middle-earth's history, but the Ents have kept it hidden, even from the Valar. The journey into Fangorn began, with Gandalf leading the way, followed by Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. The dense trees of the forest seemed to close in around them, as if the very air grew heavier with each step. The further they traveled, the more the silence pressed in, disturbed only by the occasional rustle of the wind through the branches. But even that felt ominous, as if the trees were listening. Gimli, ever the skeptic, voiced his discomfort. This place feels like it has been forgotten for a reason, he muttered. Nothing good can come from stepping into the heart of something so ancient. The dwarves would never tread here willingly. Legolas, with his sharp elven senses, glanced about warily. But we must, Gimli. The truth must be uncovered, and this is the only way. They made camp at the edge of the forest's deepest parts, where the trees were said to be the oldest and most ancient. Gandalf sat in meditation, seeking guidance, while the others looked around, uneasy. In the stillness of the night, the trees whispered soft, ancient voices carried on the wind. Legolas stood at the edge of the camp, his sharp ears listening. There is something out there, he said quietly. Something ancient. The air feels charged with magic. It's not just the forest, it's something deeper, hidden beneath the roots. The sense of dread deepened as Gandalf rose from his meditations. I've been wrong, he said softly. It's not just an ancient evil, it is the last remnants of Morgoth's will. It was sealed here long ago, before the fall of Numenor, and it is waking now. The Ents have always guarded it, but this evil will not stay buried much longer. Gandalf, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli prepared for the next stage of their journey, their hearts heavy with the weight of the discovery that lay ahead. The deeper they went into Fangorn, the more the sense of danger grew. The trees themselves seemed alive, not just with the whispering wind, but with a presence, a dark force that was far older and far more dangerous than any they had faced before. They were nearing the heart of the forest, where the true power lay. What they would discover there could change everything. The truth of Fangorn's ancient secrets was within their reach. But as the ancient darkness stirred, they began to realize the true danger of this mystery was not just in what had been hidden, but in what they might unleash. They would soon learn that in Fangorn, the past is never fully gone, and some secrets are meant to stay buried forever. As Gandalf and his companions ventured deeper into the heart of Fangorn, the atmosphere grew thick with an unsettling silence. The trees, ancient and towering, stretched endlessly in all directions, their vast limbs hanging like silent sentinels. It was as though the very air around them had become charged with a force they could not comprehend. The forest was eerily still, save for the faint rustle of leaves whispering secrets lost to time. At first, it was subtle, an occasional flicker in the corner of their eyes, the sensation of being watched, the trees seeming to sway just slightly without wind. But as they pushed further into the darkened woods, the signs grew clearer, more disturbing. Shadows flickered like smoke at the edges of their vision, shapes moving just out of reach, disappearing the moment they turned their gaze toward them. Aragorn, leading the group, paused. He had been silent for some time, his gaze scanning the endless rows of trees. "Something's wrong," he murmured. "This place, it feels alive in a way I've never felt before." Gimli, ever the skeptic, frowned, his hands tight on the hilt of his axe. "Nonsense," he muttered. "Trees are trees. They can't feel. This place is just a little more ominous than usual." But even Gimli could not deny the strange, unnatural silence that permeated the forest. The birds no longer sang. The breeze barely stirred the branches, and the very earth beneath their feet seemed to pulse with a faint, almost imperceptible energy, a hum that made the hairs on the back of their necks stand on end. Gandalf had been unusually quiet as well, his mind piecing together the strange occurrences in this ancient forest. "The Ents are not what they seem," Gandalf finally spoke, his voice low and thoughtful. "For centuries, they have protected this land, watching over it like the shepherds of a forgotten age. But their silence, it is not just a refusal to speak. It is a warning." The more Gandalf pondered the Ents' motives, the more he grew suspicious. The deeper they went into Fangorn, the travelers, traders, and adventurers who had ventured into the woods were becoming impossible to ignore. Stories filtered in from nearby villages, whispers of those who had entered and never returned, their final words trailing off in terrified silence. Some spoke of nightmares, visions of ancient shadows that plagued the minds of those who dared to wander too far into Fangorn. Others told tales of the Ents themselves, who had grown more reclusive in recent years, their movements erratic, as though they were guarding something far more dangerous than anyone had realized. What had once been a peaceful refuge now seemed to hold something far darker, something the Ents were desperately trying to keep hidden. Gandalf paused by an ancient tree, his hand resting on its gnarled bark. "These trees," he murmured, "they carry memories far older than the youngest among us, and something has stirred them to silence. Silence. It's as if something is driving them away," said Legolas, his keen eyes scanning the surroundings with an almost supernatural awareness. "I've never seen Fangorn this way before. This isn't just nature at work. There is something more at play here." Gandalf's eyes darkened. Something more indeed, something from the past, a force long buried by the Valor. As they continued through the tangled wood, Gandalf's mind raced. The more he considered the signs, the more the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. This forest was not merely ancient. It was guarding a secret far darker than any of them could have imagined. A secret tied to the very origins of Middle-earth itself. The story of Moria echoed in Gandalf's mind, the story of the dwarves, reckless greed, awakening the Balrog, a creature of ancient evil. And in the same way, he realized the Númenóreans had awakened the darkness in Armanielos, believing that they could control forces they barely understood. The same pattern seemed to be unfolding here in Fangorn. But this time, it was far older. The Ents were not just guardians of the forest. They were protectors of a power that had been sealed away long before the rise of Sauron, before the fall of Morgoth. This power, Gandalf suspected, was the very remnants of Morgoth's dark magic that had been buried in the ancient times. What if the Ents had been entrusted not only to protect the woods, but to guard against the resurgence of Morgoth's corruption? The deeper Gandalf journeyed into Fangorn, the clearer it became. This was not just a forest, nor even a place of power. It was a seal, a barrier against an ancient evil that still lingered, waiting for the right time to reawaken. The very forest itself was a prison, one that the Ents had been charged with protecting for millennia. What if the growing power in the forest was the stirring of that ancient evil Morgoth's influence, a power that had never truly been destroyed, but hidden from the world? They had come here seeking answers, but they had found only more questions, and a creeping sense of dread began to settle over the group. The day was waning as they reached the heart of the forest, a clearing unlike any they had seen before. The trees here were massive, massive, ancient, their trunks twisted and gnarled, and their roots sank deep into the soil like veins of old, forgotten magic. The air was thick with the presence of something old, something that had never meant to be disturbed. Gandalf could feel it now, the pulse of ancient power beneath the earth, thrumming with an unsettling rhythm. "This is where it began," he said softly, barely a whisper. "This is the heart of it, the source." The ground seemed to hum beneath their feet, and the air grew thick with a heavy tension, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. A shadow moved across the clearing, a presence that was not natural, not of this world. The trees, too, seemed to shift and whisper in the wind, their branches creaking like old bones. Gimli gripped his axe tightly, looking around nervously. "There's something here," he muttered. "Something we shouldn't be near." Legolas nodded gravely. "The trees have not been this still in centuries. Something stirs beneath us." Gandalf felt a cold chill run through him as he turned toward the heart of the clearing. The earth trembled beneath them, and for the briefest moment it was as if the very forest itself was alive, shifting, awakening. In the distance, Gandalf caught sight of the first signs of the ancient magic, glowing runes inscribed on stone, half buried in the earth. These runes were old, older than the First Age, and they hummed with a power Gandalf recognized all too well, a power that could only belong to Morgoth. The very land itself had been tainted by his touch. "We've come too far," Gandalf said, his voice heavy with the weight of the truth. "This is not just a forest. It is a prison built to keep Morgoth's evil at bay. The Ents have not just been guarding the trees. They've been guarding the last remnants of his power." As they stood there, the ground beneath their feet began to crack, and the trees around them seemed to move, closing in. Gandalf felt the weight of the discovery pressing down on him, and a chill crept into his heart. They had come to uncover the truth of Fangorn, but the truth was far darker than they had ever anticipated. The darkness of Morgoth's power was still alive in the heart of the forest, and they had just awakened it. The forest of Fangorn seemed to breathe with the weight of ages, and each step taken by Gandalf and his companions felt like an intrusion into a world far older than they had ever imagined. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and ancient trees, the canopy above them so dense that it barely allowed a sliver of sunlight to reach the forest floor. It was a place of mystery, where the line between the known and the unknown blurred, and every rustling leaf seemed to whisper secrets long forgotten. As they ventured deeper into the heart of the forest, the tension among them grew. The air grew heavier, the very ground beneath their feet seeming to pulse with a life of its own. Aragorn walked with a steady pace, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword, his senses sharp as ever. Legolas, with his elven heritage, moved silently, his keen eyes scanning the shadows. Gimli, always wary of the unknown, muttered to himself, the weight of his axe a constant reassurance. But it was Gandalf, the most attuned to the ancient forces that shaped Middle-earth, who felt the true change. The forest had always been a place of power, a sanctuary for the Ents and the natural world they guarded. But now, Gandalf could feel the ancient magic stirring beneath the trees, an oppressive force that seemed to be awakening from a long slumber. This place, Gandalf said softly, his voice barely more than a whisper, is not merely a sanctuary. It is a prison, a seal on something far darker than we could have anticipated. The group paused, standing at the edge of a clearing where the trees grew unnaturally close together, their branches intertwining in an intricate web of thick, gnarled wood. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding, as if the forest itself was watching them. Do you feel that? Legolas asked, his voice low. It is as if the forest is alive, but not in the way it should be. It feels wrong. Gandalf nodded gravely. It is the magic of Morgoth, he said. Not just the power he left behind, but a force he left sealed. And it is beginning to awaken. As they stepped into the clearing, the ground beneath their feet trembled, a low vibration pulsing through the soil. The trees groaned as though waking from a deep slumber, their branches creaking in protest. The quiet whispers that had followed them into the forest grew louder, now sounding like voices, soft and distant, yet full of foreboding. Gandalf reached into his robes and pulled out an ancient scroll, its edges frayed and the ink faded with time. The Ents, he muttered as he unraveled it. They were not just protectors of the trees. They were the guardians of a secret, one tied to the very roots of Middle-earth. Aragorn stepped forward. What secret? The truth of this forest, Gandalf replied. Fangorn was never meant to be a simple forest. It was a prison for the darkest power of Morgoth. The Ents were entrusted with the task of keeping it hidden, keeping it sealed. But they could never truly destroy it. As Gandalf spoke, the ground seemed to tremble beneath them again, and the forest seemed to come alive, not in the peaceful way it once had, but with a growing malice. The trees themselves began to shift, their branches twisting and creaking, as if they were alive with an unnatural hunger. The very forest was reacting to the awakening of an ancient, corrupted power. We must find the source, Gandalf said, his voice now steely with resolve. The deeper we go, the more we disturb the dark magic that lies beneath. It is not just a relic. It is a force that could bring Morgoth back to life. The party pressed on, moving deeper into the clearing, where a strange sight awaited them. A massive stone slab, covered in runes, lay half buried beneath the roots of a giant tree. The runes were ancient, older than any known script in Middle-earth. As Gandalf traced his fingers along the markings, a chill ran through him. Here, Gandalf breathed, lies the truth. The stone was once part of a ritual, a seal placed by the Valar power of Morgoth was too great for even them to destroy. So they sealed it away here, in Fangorn, with the Ents as its guardians. But it seems that the seal has begun to weaken. The ground beneath them rumbled again, louder this time, and a dark mist began to rise from the earth. The trees, their branches now twisted and gnarled, began to shift violently, as though the forest itself was reacting to the disturbance. The whispers grew louder, a low, incessant hum, like an ancient song being sung by unseen voices. The presence of Morgoth's dark power was unmistakable. Gandalf's heart raised, his pulse quickening. The evil they had feared was no longer just a distant shadow. It was a real and present danger. Move quickly, Gandalf ordered. We must leave this place before it consumes us. But it was too late. From the shadows of the forest, dark shapes began to emerge, wraith-like figures. Their forms twisted and malformed, as if they were created by the very dark magic that had once been sealed. These creatures, born of Morgoth's malice, surged forward, their eyes glowing with a faint, malevolent light. "We are too close," Gandalf muttered under his breath, his hand instinctively reaching for his staff. "The power of Morgoth is breaking free. We must stop it now." The creatures moved with incredible speed, their forms blurring as they closed in on the group. Gandalf raised his staff, summoning the last remnants of his power. A beam of light erupted from the staff, pushing the dark shapes back, but the force of their resistance grew stronger, like a rising tide of corruption. "Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli," Gandalf shouted. "We must hold our ground." Together they fought, using everything at their disposal to fend off the wraiths. But the power of Morgoth was too strong. The ground beneath their feet cracked and split, as if the earth itself was attempting to swallow them whole. The trees groaned as though in agony, their roots contorting to trap them. Gandalf's heart pounded as the realization struck him like a hammer. The ancient magic they had uncovered was never meant to be disturbed. The evil of Morgoth, long thought vanquished, had only been sealed away, and now it was breaking free. The fight seemed endless, the very air growing thick with a sense of doom. Each step they took forward, each battle they fought, only seemed to bring them closer to the heart of the forest, where the true source of the evil still lay dormant, but stirring. As the final creature was banished, the forest fell into a deep silence. The trees were still again, their branches motionless. The ground no longer trembled. Yet the horror of what they had faced lingered. The journey had forever changed Gandalf and his companions. They now knew the full scope of the evil they had uncovered. The power of Morgoth still lingered in the depths of Fangorn, and the Ents' guardianship was not just to protect the forest, but to keep this ancient curse from reawakening. Gandalf reflected on the danger of seeking knowledge. Some things, he realized, were better left undisturbed. Secrets could not be fully destroyed. even the most noble of kings and guardians could be ensnared by the dark forces of the world. The legacy of Morgoth still tainted Middle-earth, and the curse of his influence would never be fully eradicated. As Gandalf stood at the edge of Fangorn, looking back at the forest that had now become something far more sinister, he spoke softly to his companions. Some secrets, he said, were meant to remain buried forever, for the truth is often darker than anyone